1, 2, 3. A very good evening to all our viewers. I'm Divya Bansal, currently the Dean of Alumni and International Relations and also Professor of Computer Science at PEC. We are all here today to welcome the new year, 2021, and on behalf of Punjab Engineering College, we'd like to extend our warm wishes. May you continue to stay healthy, and we wish you a very happy new year. And on this note, we bring to you Dr. K.K. Talwar, a very distinguished medical professional, ex-director of PGI, Padma Bhushan awardee, and a former chairman of Medical Council of India, who is going to tell us why we should be hopeful in 2021. For PEC, this is a very special year as we enter into our centenary celebrations and thus turn 100 years young, under the leadership of Dr. Dheeraj Sanghi, who joined us in January 2019 as the director of PEC. He brought several extraordinary changes in PEC, including innovations in curriculum, faculty recruitment, and institutional management to inculcate and promote excellence. And most importantly, we are indebted to him for the way he led PEC through times of pandemic and crisis. He worked tirelessly responding to each and every email of the students and faculty, navigated the institution such that several of the initiatives founded under his remarkable leadership during COVID were being emulated in universities across the country. PEC has been extremely fortunate to have him as the director, guided by his commitment to education and research and to health and safety of entire PEC community. Our host for the event today is our own alum, Kunal Nandwani, who graduated from Computer Science and Engineering in the year 2002 and later did his MBA from ESSEC, France. He's a serial tech entrepreneur and serves as co-founder and CEO at UTrade, Hashcov, and Cove Identity. Previously, he's worked in investment banking with Lehman Brothers in London. Without further ado, let me now hand over to our director, Dr. Dheeraj Sanghi, for his address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Divya. That was, I haven't heard an introduction of that kind before. Thank you very much, very generous. Wishing everybody a very, very happy new year. It's a very strange new year that we actually look forward to finishing of the previous year, then welcoming the new year. And, you know, the last year was really defined by COVID. If anybody were to say what happened in 2020, I think COVID is going to be one of the things that everybody will talk about. Now, when there is a pandemic, I remember a long time ago, maybe in March or something, I was Googling, when does a pandemic end and how does it end? And it said, and there was a very interesting article that I read, and it said it ends twice. And I'm like, how can an event end twice? And it says there is a medical end of a pandemic and there is a social end of a pandemic. A medical end of a pandemic is when there is a medicine, when people can get cured, or there is a immunity based on vaccine. So there is a medical intervention that has somehow kept the situation under control. And there is a social ending of a pandemic when people say, okay, we have learned how to live with this. It may or may not be ending medically, but we know how to live with this. And we can go back to our normal lives, maybe taking a few precautions like mask wearing or social distancing and so on, but we are going to now live our normal life. I hope both of these, and in some pandemics, social ending happens before medical ending, and in some pandemics, medical ending happens before social ending. So I hope both these endings do happen in 2021. We are going to look at the medical side of it today from Professor Talwar. But before I hand over to Kunal to introduce Professor Talwar, Let me once again wish everybody a very, very happy new year and wish that pandemic will get under control in this year. Thank you everyone for listening. Kunal.
Hi guys. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy New Year to you all. I would like to extend my warm welcome to our distinguished speaker of the day, Dr. Kewal Kishan Talwar. I take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Talwar, Chairman, PSRI Heart Institute, New Delhi, and the Honorable Advisor, Government of Punjab, Health and Medical Education. He's got an amazing profile and it's worth reading it out and hearing it out. So he's an Indian cardiologist, medical academic, and a writer, and a former chairman of Medical Council of India. He has also served as the former director of Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, PGIMER. He's also a former president of the National Academy of Medical Sciences and former head department of cardiology, AIMS, New Delhi. He's credited to have performed the first implantation of ICD therapy in South Asia that has been featured in the Limca Book of World Records in 1997. It was under his guidance only that the heart transplant program at AIMS, New Delhi achieved success in 1994. He's also credited with the introduction of cardiac resynchronization therapy in India, also listed in Limca Book of World Records. Given his significant and distinguished contributions to the field of medicine, the Government of India awarded him Padma Bhushan, the third highest civilian honor in 2006. He was also presented with a Lifetime Achievement Award at the International Conference of Wellness 2019 by the University Institute of Health Sciences in Kanpur 2019. He's also the recipient of Dr. B.C. Roy Award, the highest Indian award in the medical category. We look forward to an interactive and insightful session on the topic to which we are all curious about, COVID-19 in 2021, ushering hopes, as we solicit to gain perspective and widen our spectrum of knowledge. Over to you, Dr. Talwar. We all look forward to hearing from you and looking at what you have to present.
Thank you so much. Let me just go to my screen. Professor Sanghi, the director of the institution, distinguished faculty, distinguished alumni, and Mr. Kunalji, thank you for your introduction, which I probably is too much. I should not have. Anyway, that's customary on these occasions. I see Dr. Grover also, the resident of the other students of the college. I think it's a privilege and honor for me to be invited to be sort of participating as for the Centenary lecture series. And I have chosen a topic today, and that is the COVID-19. And as has been said, I think this is one disease. This has been probably the whole health community, I think, has been really shaken by this health crisis in 2020. And we never expected that we will be facing such a health crisis, and probably a crisis where the health or the medical education had no clear answer in the beginning. I'm going to sort of share with you that what we have learned lessons in 2020 and how we feel that 2021, the new year. And I think I also take this opportunity to wish all of you a very happy new year. And I hope that this is going to be in the health, the healing year. We sort of overcome, I think as Dr. Sanghi said, we see the end of this pandemic, not only medically, but also socially. Now, if we look at the few historical facts, I think probably it says that from December first patient was identified who had COVID. And I think after a few days, His wife had to be hospitalized with pneumonic problem. And then on 21st December, I think the Wuhan doctors started noticing clusters of pneumonic patients, and they were not clear what is the cause. On 30th December, Dr. Li Wenliang, I'm just naming him because I think there is some historical fact with this. He warned other doctors' colleagues that there is a possible outbreak of an illness resembling like subacute respiratory syndrome or a severe acute respiratory problem. And I think 2 days later, this doctor was summoned by the security people, the police people, and he was charged by accusing of spreading rumors. And I think he has to apologize and say that he will not do such illegal act in future. Unfortunately, he himself developed this pneumonic ailment and died after a few days. If you look at in December and around the new year, about nearly 2 lakh people travel from Wuhan. And the WHO official statement, which came on January 8th, they praised the Chinese for identifying the virus, but they did not recommend any specific measures for travelers and advises against any travel restrictions. I think this was something probably I wish this would have been realized, the seriousness of the disease. And if this kind of a precautionary note had come that travel restrictions should be restricted, I think probably the world would have been to some extent saved from this serious issue. Of course, I think we know that in third week of January, then Chinese has to sort of announce for quarantine of the whole Wuhan area. So, but by that time, I think millions of people had traveled from Wuhan. They say it is connected to 23 or 24 countries. And because the New Year, Christmas, many Chinese came from outside and then went back to those places. So I think all this led to the widespread of this issue. And this, I think, within a few months was like a pandemic. So I think the one lesson that we learned, there was an overlooking of the seriousness of this disease and transmission factors, both in China and I think WHO also, I think initially, I think sort of did not realize the seriousness of this particular disease and did not advise as probably was would have as expected. Then I think look at the transmission of this disease is initially thought to be seafood market that sold live animals and from where most patients had worked or visited. And so then it was a human to human spread. It came from the probably bats and went to maybe penguin. And then I think with some mutation, I think infected the human being and there was a human to human spread, which is the main mode of transmission. And the known transmitted ways were like droplets. This is that when you cough, you speak, you sneeze, you bring out droplets of the virus, the person who is infected. And those who are around you, they sort of get infected. And similarly, or maybe direct contact, if somebody coughs and the droplets put on the surface, are on the surface, or so settle on the surface, if you touch it, you may contact the virus. And if you touch your face, your nose, and I think you may then get this virus. And of course, the aerosol transmission was, there was some questions whether it is there or not, but I think there's a micro kind of particles, viral particles. Probably this is has a importance in the closed spaces. In a closed room where I think there is a sort of less ventilation and probably the aerosol may get suspended in the air for a longer time and even travel more distance than what we expect. We say about 6 feet is the droplet that may travel, but aerosol may go to even a much longer kind of distance. And so that is another source of kind of a spread. Of course, there was some concern that stools, blood, or ocular secretion may be also source of transmission, but this is not certain. And this just to show you that I think the from bat went to probably the pangolin, and I think some mutation and infected the man, and I think Then I think the spread of this virus, I think we learned that it is a droplet which is source of infection, and then the mask use will be of great help. And I think something which has probably helped this to control spread as well as to minimize the disease. Even it is mentioned that mask might even act as kind of a immunization way. After the physical distance, we call about 6 feet or so because the droplets don't travel beyond that. Hand hygiene, proper ventilation, avoiding crowded groups or enclosed spaces, I said, aerosol transmission, the micro particle can also travel longer, may also become. So I think this will, we learned a lesson that the need of mask, but this was only appreciated in the mid-April. Before that, even WHO or other organizations never recommended the use of mask. Of course, the use of mask, the benefit of mask was documented in Spanish flu in 1918 and the SARS coronavirus 2002 or 3, the first coronavirus SARS that we say also. And these countries who have been using mask as a habit, like Japan, Thailand, Hong Kong, Singapore, they all got saved and their death in those countries very low. I think Japan, hardly less than 2,000 people died because of the COVID, just because they were in the habit of wearing mask. Now, I think it's just to show you that once it was realized the importance, this is about the as COVID-19. If you look at the USA, some counties, if there was before the use of mask, see the hospitalization was very high, but once people start using mask, and this quickly fell down. And so it is that the mask, because the problem in this disease is that many people are silent. I mean, they are asymptomatic in the first few days or may stay asymptomatic, but they can infect others. But if you have a mask, then you don't bring out too much of droplets and other person who's wearing mask. So I think mask is now even mentioned to be that's like a immunizing the body if you use for long period. CDC director in July even mentioned that if everyone wore a mask for next 6 weeks, due to the COVID could go to the ground. So that's the importance of mask. But unfortunately, I think as in society, many people are not realizing the importance of the mask and are not still, in spite of repeated kind of communication. I think this has a and sort of we have not been able to convince people that everybody should wear a mask. Even now, there are some countries where the feeling, even indoor, if you are in a group, try to wear a mask. So as I mentioned, the clinical spread is transmission is from mostly asymptomatic individuals. And the first 2-3 days before somebody becomes asymptomatic, he is in a more infective phase. You transmit at that time and you are not aware that you are having a COVID, and the people across you don't know that you have a COVID. And that's the reason that this has been a highly infective ailment and large number of asymptomatic population. And that probably the reason it spread so fast all over the globe that within 3 months, I think on 11th March, the WHO has to announce it as a pandemic. Another fact that we learned that I think though there are tests to identify, like the RT-PCR is the important test, the gold test, and which if it's positive, you are suffering from COVID. It has was also realized subsequently that this test may stay positive for a longer time, but it is only the first 10 days of when you become symptomatic, 8-9 days that you are infective. Beyond that, you are not infective. So that has helped that the isolation period can be shortened from now 17 to 14 to 10 days or so. After 10 days, you don't stay infective. So that's though of course you may still be positive if you do RT-PCR, but you are no more infective. And this is just a graph to show you that if you look at that once person is exposed and you get asymptomatic for 2-3 days, and some people who get symptomatic may stay sort of infective, and the total infective period is about 10 days. Of course, the RT-PCR may continue to be positive even till 17 days, and occasionally has been seen to be positive in as even 104 days, the maximum person continue to be positive. But of course, the infectivity phase is only 10 days after infection. Now, if you look at the disease problem, this has taught us how to manage this. And the first phase is the viral infection. The viral phase, we say, then I think get the pulmonary lung involvement is the commonest in this, that you get the pulmonary phase. And here the immunity of the body starts to fight this viral infection to control it. In most people, it's able to control it and person becomes okay within 10 to 14 days. But in some situations, there may be a sort of high inflammatory response. Your immunity may be overactive, and those are the some of the individuals may get like what we call a hyperinflammation phase, or the cytokine storm we call it, and that may be this reason that some get more sick, not because of the viral infection, but because of this body reaction or the cytokine storm in the body. And that's why drugs which are needed at this stage are different, that drugs which are needed at this stage are different. So this has also taught us that I think how to be more wise in handling this crisis. So these are just clinical manifestation. We know that respiratory system is the most commonly affected, that we can get heart attacks, you can get diarrhea, abdominal pain, neurological features, embolic strokes, renal issues, you get acute renal failure, some skin manifestation, and rarely in children was seen that a toxic shock syndrome like a Kawasaki disease, but this has been rare. But we have not seen much here. There have been few reports from the Western population. So I think this disease, either the pathogenesis is a direct viral cytopathic, but direct viral injury, or a cytokine storm. So I think that has led us to feel that probably how we can try to handle this health crisis. This is just to show the clinical manifestation. All systems are involved. So this is more of a multi-systemic disease than only a respiratory disease. For the purpose of treatment, I think three kind of class or levels have been recognized. 80% to 85% of patients may not be having or have very mild symptom, and it is realized that you can keep them at home. Home isolation probably now is a preferred treatment. You just have to isolate yourself for about 10 to 14 days, and after that you sort of can be free. And so it's some kind of a medications which are just more like supplements, and we still don't have any effective antiviral drugs that can really, we can say that you take this drug and you will be okay. There are a few drugs which have come, but they have not been sort of really stood to the test of time that they are really effective. Of 15% may be moderately symptomatic and may need hospitalizations, and routine kind of oxygen help to them, and as few drugs can help to bring them to normal. It's only about 3% of patients, I think, who we get critical. That is the crucial part and thing, and that's why we all got scared, because you get these patients quickly into the hospital, how to manage them, high mortality, and we know something now about that how to handle them. But I think initial period, you must have all seen that what was the kind of the Western population who have such a high quality health facilities had to face the sort of morbidity and mortality of this particular health crisis. Just to share with you that we have no specific approved treatment today even. Number of drugs like hydroxychloroquine, then ivermectin, antibiotics, favipiravir, antiviral cream, remdesivir. I'm sure all of you must be familiar with these names, convalescent plasma therapy. That all has been tried, but some or the other that we still don't have a clear evidence that they are really helpful. In some drugs like remdesivir, probably it was thrown that bit, but it may shorten the ailment, but does not sort of improve from getting critical or improving the survival. The only drug which I think has found to be useful is corticosteroid, particularly if a patient, I think when they go into cytokine storm or a low oxygen saturation, I think this is one drug which is a very old drug, has shown to be helpful to sort of improve survival in these patients. So I think this is some factor that we learn. Late arrival to hospital, I think, is one factor. We have to motivate patient to come quickly. Strengthening timely referral was another fact. Was the comorbid state. Those who had really sick and get sort of are a real threat of this disease and high mortality is the people who have a comorbid states like diabetes, hypertension, coronary disease, heart failure, kidney issue, cancer, obesity. And of course, we have to give a special attention to the comorbid condition. We have to save them both from prevention as well as if somebody gets it to manage them. So I think evidence-based treatments have come sort of, we are a little more wiser how to manage these cases. Just to share with you that how important is the comorbid situation, including the age. If you look at that, these are the kind of comorbid situation: cardiovascular, respiratory, diabetes, hypertension, cancer issue, immune compromise. At any age, if somebody has comorbid factor, the mortality is 3 to 10 or 20 times more than those who don't have comorbid factor. And this is just to show some of the state where you must have seen there was a high mortality: Gujarat, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, West Bengal, Delhi, Punjab, because all these states have a high comorbid prevalence of the population as compared to many other states which have a low prevalence of these diseases, and probably the mortality was less in those states. So I think that what we have learned it that patients who have a comorbid state should be admitted and managed as we have learned over the time, and aggressive monitoring to pick up hypoxia early. This I think the lesson learned. I think in the beginning when somebody said no, everybody should have a pulse oximeter, people doubted. But now we realize the best way of monitoring this disease is that I think should have a pulse oximeter. So long your saturation is normal, you probably don't get any bad effect of this disease. You may have fever. Some people may continue fever for even 9, 10 days, 11 days, 12 days. But if your oxygen saturation is okay, and that I think simple device helps you to make pick up or monitor your oxygen saturation at home. And if it's normal, I think probably you are going to come out of this. And of course, we learned about many way of helping those who have a hypoxia or pneumonic issue, like prone positioning, high flow nasal cannula to give high oxygen, or non-invasive ventilation. And it was learned that if you put them on invasive ventilators, the death rate or the mortality is very high. It's very difficult to deventilate these patients. So there has been now that always effort that try all other ways to avoid invasive ventilation. Of course, I mentioned was steroids, looking at the comorbid factors, and early identification of these cases so as to give the best possible the knowledge that we have today. Now, the lesson that we have learned as for managing, I think golden period is initial 3 to 7 days. Respiratory symptoms are predominant, but I think close monitoring, hypoxia monitoring helps you to see I think what kind of a help you need. Of course, now there are special ways of helping those who get pneumonic issue, get hypoxia, use of high flow nasal cannulas, and avoid invasive ventilation. Of course, the drugs which had a lot of hype, hydroxychloroquine, even the President of USA, Mr. Trump, I mean, was advocating this, ivermectin, even plasma therapy, any other antiviral drugs. We realize many of these trials, like Solidarity trial by WHO, Recovery trial by UK, Placid trial for the plasma in India, I think they all showed that they probably have no benefit in this disease. And steroids, of course, has been useful. A home isolation has been, I think, realized is the best way of managing most of these patients, which gives a confidence to the patient. And one issue I'll try to say stigma issue, which I think was probably, I must say this, the medical community has to blame, or maybe administration, that why we create a stigma for the disease. People were like, founder, no, he has this disease, just isolate them. I think people start getting scared, even getting for tests. There were that if any person has at a home a COVID patient, a sticker will be put outside the house. I think I know we felt very sort of strong against it, and I think soon government of Punjab removed this, that there will be no kind of sticker on anybody's house. So I think these were, it's a disease which only require that people have to be isolated because they can be infected. And just I think what we are going to see in 2021, how I think this year looks more optimistic and hopeful to handling this health crisis. I think to end this pandemic, both medically and socially. I think new drugs, probably some of the new antiviral drugs are may come, which may help. And of course, we also know about this monoclonal antibody, which was a cocktail of antibodies, neutralizing antibodies. I think this is the one therapy which was given to President Trump when he had COVID positivity, and now more trials are going on. But that's very effective. Of course, is very expensive at the moment. And all some of the drugs, both for handling virus and cytokine storm, are under I think different phases. And I think there's another drug, very steady. This also feels very promising if somebody goes into cytokine storm. Now, I'm just going to now share with you this has been what I think we have seen in the last, I think, 1 year, and how we have grown to handle this disease, to learn more about this disease. And I must mention you that we in medical always felt that this is one disease which doesn't follow the rule of medicine. And I think now the answer is probably we all knew for this is herd immunity. Now, herd immunity takes time. Herd immunity means that proportion of population having acquired immunity which breaks the chain of transmission. Higher the communicability, higher the threshold. This is nearly 60% of the population should be affected before the community gets a herd immunity and the spread stops of this disease. And then also depends upon, we are still not very clear that suppose somebody gets infected with it and get immune to it, how long this immune memory lasts, how long this immune passport is there, 6 months, more than that, or years. This I think is one factor which we will now learn this year more, as I think more people are going to be vaccinated. If we have to sort of in our country, 60% of the Indian population need to be immune by infection or vaccination if we want to have herd immunity. We know that some of the serosurveillance studies have shown 30% community is already affected. But I think if we wait for, I think we may lose many precious lives. Even if you have 60% population to go through infection, looking at the mortality only 0.5%, but we have around 1.5%, how many people will be losing if we wait for that? And that's the reason that vaccine is an urgent need to achieve herd immunity. And herd immunity as COVID strategy is the most important to handle this, get out of this pandemic. And with herd immunity, the vast majority of the population are vaccinated, lowering the overall amount of virus able to spread in the whole population. It's not necessary that every single person needs to be vaccinated to be protected, which helps ensure vulnerable group who cannot get vaccinated and get safe. I think then we come to the vaccine, which really I think is going to probably, we have a lot of hope on this. This is the only thing that probably helps to end this pandemic. And if we look at the vaccine issue, I think in this virus, spike protein has been the most important component of the virus because these get attached to the cell and then they get into the cell and create issues. So the most of the vaccine has been targeting the spike protein, so that I must admit, you see, I'm not an immunologist, I'm not an infectious disease expert, I'm basically a cardiologist, but my whole understanding and knowledge of this disease grew because I was involved in handling this crisis in the state of Punjab as an advisor. So I think the last 9 months, 10 months since March has been sort of working on this with various experts and epidemiologists, how to sort of make sure that we sort of help our society. So I think these are the vaccine, and there are a number of platforms which are being used to produce these vaccines. And I'll just share with you some important one. This just to mention about the platform, that there are few platforms which were not earlier used for preparing any kind of vaccines. RNA, DNA, the RNA vaccine, we know about these few vaccines. So these are new platform, but they're more faster. And so only thing is, most of the platform which are being used, people have to use 2 doses. I think there's only one vaccine which are being attempted, where you may need only one injection, but at the moment, the vaccines which are in the advanced stage or which have been approved, they all need two injections. The Pfizer, I think, is the one which we all know that the Pfizer with German biotechnology, BioNTech, this vaccine is a messenger RNA, 2 doses, 21 days apart. Of course, you can go till even 3 months for the second dose. And the phase 3 study, they studied about 43,000, all no safety concern. And in this vaccine, as we all know, has been approved. And in UK was first, the approval came in UK on 2nd December, and then few days they start vaccinating. And I think some days back they have done more than 6 lakh, and then UK is to, I think now the other this vaccine, the only issue with this vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, is storage. You have to store it in -70, which I think is transporting it, storing it, because if you open it, then you can store in the fridge only for 4 or 5 days. You can't keep it beyond that. So you have to keep it and that's the issue which many countries may not be having this kind of facilities in that number that you can sort of keep these vaccines, store these vaccines. The other vaccine is Moderna. This also, I think, is an mRNA-based vaccine, and 2 doses, 20 days, 8 days apart. This has been also now approved in USA. Pfizer has been approved in Europe, in some other also countries, and Moderna in USA, I think Europe also has approved this. And the third vaccine was the Oxford vaccine, or AstraZeneca, and this is a different than the other two platforms. Is a viral vector vaccine, and this has been also approved. I think in December 30th was approved in UK, and 1st January was, I think the expert group has given approval on 1st January, and today, I mean, so I think this is one which going to be this. This is one vaccine which is also Serum Institute of India is the local maker, and so I think the storage is not an issue with this vaccine, and I'm sure that this vaccine is going to be mostly used in the country. Bharat Biotech, this is a totally indigenous vaccine being manufactured by Bharat Biotech in collaboration with National Institute of Virology and ICMR. And I just learned about a few hours back that conditional approval also has been given to this vaccine in the country. This is totally indigenous vaccine, and this is again 2 doses, 14 days apart. So I think these two vaccines are going to be mostly available in the country, and I'm sure in the next week or so, as the government of India has prioritized, I'll share with you those, it is going to be initiated. Then Johnson & Johnson, this was one company which was coming with a vaccine which is single dose. But unfortunately, I think in October, there was a patient who had an unexplained illness. I think after that, there was a pause in this trial study of this vaccine. I'm not aware after that what has happened. There's no much news on that, but that's going to be one injection if it really matures into a useful vaccine. And of course, then Sputnik V is the Russian vaccine, and I think they say also it is 90% plus effective, but only very few cases have been done in phase 3, so we are not sure about it. And I think the trial also is going on in phase 3 in the country also on this vaccine. Then Novavax, this is under study, but there are 2-3 vaccines with Chinese name have come, like Sinopharm and I think Sinovac. They have been approved in those countries, but really I think there has been, because of much phase 3 studies are available. So these are the few of the vaccines which are globally available. But I think the 2 vaccines that I think both the Covishield from the AstraZeneca with the Serum Institute of India, which they are manufacturing, and now Bharat Biotech are the 2 vaccines I think will be available in the country, and the vaccines may start soon. And COVAX is a global initiative to secure COVID-19 vaccines for international distribution, announced on Friday. Their agreements have been linked with vaccine manufacturers last Friday to procure 2 billion doses for 192 countries, including 250 million doses for India. So if we look at this vaccine, it's I think unprecedented speed of vaccine. In 10 months, we have a vaccine, which you usually say in medicine may take 10 years to prepare a vaccine. Now, to come out with a effective vaccine for patient use, I mean, for use as such, it takes about some years. I think there is this shows the speed with which I think because of this pandemic issue, how the science has sort of aggressively worked so hard to come out with some solution to this kind of serious health crisis. And that's why, because of the each vaccine, we have not a longer duration follow up. So that's why these are all emergency use authorization, and this does create sometimes uh, feeling of fear or mistrust in the public as such. Oh, this has come so quickly. How safe they are? How safe, effective? How long the a sort of immunity going to last? These are some of the questions I think we need to just wait for time to give us the clarity. So the potential side effect issue and the dose, two doses, most all these vaccine, single dose is better, but we don't have it today. The vaccine and how immune system stays protective after vaccination, how long it lasts. Is it going to be that every year kind of a procedure, or going to be longer, or it going to be like, it's very difficult to say. I think we will learn more in this year with the use of these vaccines, and I think we'll be more wiser. Whether it gives a, how long it gives a immunity or immunity passport to an individual and to be sort of safe from this. Side effects are minimal. I must say that these are few mentioned, but there any vaccine can give this kind of fever, fatigue, nothing to worry. I think in Indian, the government plans to vaccinate about 330 million in next 6 months. They have categorized the those who will be the priority wise: first health workers, second frontline worker, third above the age of 50 because most people have high age and then the comorbid factors, and fourth is below 50 with comorbid factors. This is the way I think the vaccination is going to be delivered in the country till the more sort of the supply is more free. One issue which I think shook the world the last couple of weeks was the mutation of the coronavirus 2, and which was described from UK. UK mutation. I think everybody got. We were feeling that numbers are going down, but this suddenly shook so everybody in the globe that, oh, we have some mutation which may not create more seriousness or may not create more problem. We have been handling it now, but this may not create more serious issues. But of course, whatever information we have, that this mutation uh, may create more transmission, but there is no increased virulency. Up till now, the data do not show that there is any more seriousness as compared to the coronavirus, the original one. And South African mutation, there is some feeling the younger people may be more involved, but otherwise, seriousness wise, they seem to be that this mutation has no effect on, and that it's the natural course, so it's going to be almost same. Of course, we know that mutations are common in this virus, but some mutation can be. So I think we need to, and I think scientists can spot mutation faster than they can make sense of them. So let us see that we don't, any mutation which comes new is more helpful to the society rather than creating more issues for us. So up till now, this mutation, there's no clear evidence that even the transmission also, there is a feeling it may transmit more, but there's no such clear, more information on this, doesn't cause any serious symptom, does not render the vaccine useless. The vaccine, in all the vaccine available, will be as useful for this mutation also as for the original coronavirus. Of course, I think the coronavirus may be here for a long haul, but there is still so much we don't know about this virus. So I think we need to all the time and keep our scientific efforts continuing to handle this if any new change occurs. I mean, just to share with you other few things that I wrote in the newspaper, tackling a second wave. Luckily, we were safe. We didn't get any serious illness. And supported by some oxygenation, and I think they also come out. It's only the 3% patient who is we need some help. And of course, the social vaccine, I must emphasize, will continue even till we get a proper herd immunity. So we should not abandon this. This is going to be the still the mode of treatment to save ourselves from this virus. And so we continue with the social distance, mask, what we call SMS, because this is still the social vaccine. I think we need to educate our society that we cannot abandon this till we really have the vaccine or we have achieved the herd immunity. So if I look at the 2021 as a year of healing, optimism, and hopes. On what reason being, we may get some new antiviral drug also. Number of drugs are being tested. And now we know the therapy is being administered with the evidence-based practices. I think we know that certain drugs are not useful. We should not unnecessarily load patients, and some of them have side effects. Medical professions are now better prepared, knowledge-wise, how to handle this disease. And of course, we also see the declining number of cases in the country for the last 3 months or so. That's very encouraging. I hope it continues. We were worried about a second wave, but I think the country mostly has been saved, except few places that there has been no second wave, and the numbers are gradually going down. And of course, the coronavirus testing, we have a number of advances in the country, and the social vaccine or the COVID protective habits, they are more appreciated. People are now more knowledgeable on this, what should be done. And I think that helps to minimize the seriousness of this disease also, apart from spread. Vaccine probably is going to be the answer. I'll say, seems coronavirus is here for a long haul, but above achievements in the scientific field, in the knowledge that we have gained in the last year, ensure optimism and hopes for a better 2021. And as Professor Sanghi said, I think we probably will see the end of this pandemic in this year. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I wish you again a very, very happy and prosperous and fruitful. I grateful to the PEC for this invitation. When I was a student in PGI, I like to share that we used to walk to the PEC campus for a cup of tea, because that time, talking of early 70s, our director did not permit any canteen in the hostels. So early Sunday, sometime we used to walk to the PEC and have a cup of tea there from the shops that were there in the PEC. Of course, I again thank Dr. Sanghi for this opportunity and sharing with you about this particular disease. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Talwar. Pleasure hearing from you and getting so much details, lot of experience and expertise there. If you have a few minutes, we have tons of questions coming in. We'll try to address as many as we can. Sorry to the viewers for whose questions we are unable to take due to limited time. So, Dr. Talwar, I have a question here. So you mentioned somewhere that 6 weeks of mask wearing may possibly, in the best case scenario, remove COVID from the planet, right? Possibly. I just wonder, to a layman, to people like us, rather than us suffering and going through so many problems, pains, economic, social disruptions, don't you think it's worth, nobody has even tried to attempt, WHO, UN, or any other global body, to try and do 6 weeks of mask wearing rather than going through all this other trouble and pain?
You see, this is a statement from the CDC director, and not his
Right.
government. So this is based on a very scientific. I mean, he tried to emphasize the importance of it. If you look at the use of mask in Czechoslovakia, they initiated it. In May, they had no. I mean, the COVID was almost finishing there. They did allow again, but I mean to say that somehow or the other, to convince people to use mask, I'm surprised. You see, when I see that government trying to put fines on the non-use of mask, I used to feel, एक तो आप पैसा दे रहे हो, दूसरे आप अपने health को भी कर रहे हो. What is it?
Right.
I mean, I even once mentioned to our in one of our meeting that why don't we keep a award for it? You look at the cities. which have the maximum use of mask, give them some kind of award to motivate people. You see, this is something which I frankly, as a medical man, fail to realize. Why people not realizing the importance of mask? It's, I think, one simple thing, because somebody even written that it can be like creating immunity in the body.
Correct.
When we did not have immunity for vaccine for smallpox, they say people used to expose to these smallpox caves, small exposure to get some infection to get immunity. The mask, probably when you are infected, you probably are infected with small load of virus, and it may help your body develop immunity. And that's why I think the term of social vaccine. So what do you say is, I also wonder that what is the reason why people, such a simple thing. I mean,
Right.
so but I wish that we still have another 6 months to go till this vaccine is sort of really saves us. We need to appreciate the value of this particular simpler habit which we should adopt.
Right. I think common sense is not as common as it ought to be. So I think there's a second question, which is that how bullish are you on the accuracy and quality of the vaccines coming from firms like Moderna and Pfizer, given especially the fact that their CEOs sold majority of their shares. One of them sold like 70% of their shares in the company the day they announced that their vaccine is 93 or 94 or 95% effective. And the doubt people like laymen like us have is that if they believed in the vaccine, they could have had made a lot more money than subsequent years and year after years, but they just sold it because maybe they know something we don't. Maybe they have cut a lot of corners and nobody's questioned it much, likes of FDAs and all. So do you feel doubtful that what if there is something that is not perfect there, or there are some known challenges?
See, as far as there are two parts to your question. The first part, as the scientific, we know from the phase 3 trial, the data is quite impressive.
Okay.
The effectiveness in 95%, and any vaccine this is more than 50% effective it's a new platform. So the only concern, the second is that number one, safety. Of course, they say today, I think nearly more than 6 million people have been vaccinated with the Pfizer or not. And we don't have any kind of serious issue up till now. So it seems that safety wise is okay. Now the question is long-term effectiveness. I think that is one issue. It's a emergency authorization, because in a pandemic, probably very difficult to wait for that time. Whatever is available, you try to say, okay, this may help. So I think time will tell. This is a little concern, let us hope. But this platform looks to be, they say, sort of a, but how long the immunity lasts, I think, really I can't.
Okay. Some of the next question is, some of the PCR tests are considered to be gold standard, but easily contaminated. So how sure are we about the accuracy of the tests and the numbers of patients that we are hearing about right now?
You see, the RT-PCR test, we say, is a gold standard, and the sensitivity is quite high. And I mean, we still have a false positivity of 2-3%, not more than that. Only issue is when the erratic reports come, there are a few factors to that. One is taking sample. I think that's very important, that how the sample is collected. Because sometimes people say that I was negative, and then lab others says I am positive. Probably sample collection is one issue. Because the second issue comes the viral load. It happens sometimes people who are recovering, you say I have gone negative, and after some days I've tested, I've found to be again positive. Maybe I think the viral load sometimes will change. This can be another factor for getting sometime different results. So otherwise, I think RT-PCR test is quite a, these few factor does make a person that if you don't collect the sample properly, I think, and sometimes the viral load may also will be changing in the body, can create some issues. But otherwise, I think this test has been, and we also know the viral load, you know, the cycle threshold, you know that how much viral load you have, whether it was a high viral load, less viral load. Earlier, the reports were not writing this, but I think some months back, then it was made mandatory to mention the CT value.
Hmm.
So I
Great.
think it's a
Okay. Okay. The next question is, how do you assess the risk of taking the new vaccines for different age groups? Should some age groups be more concerned than others, or should they just try it out and go with the scientific tests and the medical practitioners' guidance?
as far as this is not advocated below 18.
Okay.
It is down beyond only 18. Younger
Okay.
people, there is no data, neither
Okay.
they had tested.
Hmm.
As far as elderly,
Hmm.
I think both Pfizer,
Hmm.
Moderna, even Oxford, they have tested in elderly people.
Okay.
And I think it has been found to be also as useful as middle-aged.
Hmm.
So I think age-wise, younger people, nobody recommend. And as far as if somebody is elderly people with comorbid factor, they should be a priority.
Hmm.
Like we say, influenza vaccine.
Hmm.
I mean, the routine influenza, every year, October, we say we have a influenza, particularly to people who are elderly, have some kind of a cardiac problem or respiratory problem, so that to
Hmm.
prevent influenza. So I think elderly people with comorbid, I think they will be the candidates who should certainly be priority for vaccination.
Got it. Next question is, does the blood type affect how vulnerable you are to COVID? Does blood type have anything to do with it at all?
There was some mention, but I don't think it has really proved
Okay.
to the extent that we say, okay, if you are this group, that you are immune. No.
Okay. And has the COVID infection led to any permanent effects and complications that we can see so far from the data?
You see, this is what is a little concern with COVID. Some percent of the patient continue with post-COVID issues.
Hmm.
Most of them they recover,
Hmm.
but there are few issues which, like the lung fibrosis. This has
Hmm.
been one of the serious issue.
Hmm.
Some people they get lung fibrosis, and this has been also associated that people who have been given oxygen for a longer time, large amount of oxygen, they probably get. You must have heard that people even going for lung transplant. So that's something which is few patients have to go to that kind of a lung effect that they had so much fibrosis that they were all the time needing oxygen, excessive oxygenation base, hospitalization. So people have gone for transplant. Even in the country, India also, few patients have gone for lung transplant. So that's the one thing. The second issue, which can be a serious issue, is some people they have a still continue to have a coagulation, coagulopathy kind of aspect. People have come with the strokes after that, and some with cardiac. These are but not many. But I think the major issue I will say will be this lung fibrosis issue.
Okay. Okay. The Moderna vaccine has been available since early Jan 2020, I believe, or we read somewhere. And it has the whole clinical trial process has taken the time and approval and everything. But we had the vaccine in January, sort of. Do you think there's a way we can, in the future, look up to speeding up the approval processes so that such viruses could be handled much quicker?
So you're right. I think I learned that on 12th and 3rd January,
Yeah,
they've already done the vaccine.
correct.
It is only after that they had to go through the process. And then you
Of course.
see, it was not possible to imagine that in 10 months you can have a vaccine. The
Yeah.
kind of rigorous
Hmm.
schedule one has to follow. We thought that some drug might come in 10 months,
Hmm.
but we never expected the vaccine will come in 10 months.
Hmm.
And this is probably this platform that they have used for both for the Pfizer and Moderna. And this they say is a quicker. Once probably then the process is same. The regulatory body doesn't have to look at each processes. So I think probably that's the way that this was more quicker. But also, and there is a apprehension of this kind that it has been like emergency authorization. It's not a routine authorization because we are still not clear of the long-term issues of this vaccine. But
Correct.
I'll say probably this will teach us lesson in future that I think this will be that if you can have in 10 months, you can have probably even a little shorter than that also. So I think right that they say that the vaccine was ready on 12th and 30th of January by correctly correct the days.
Right. Actually, mask had been ready many years before, right? So people are still not doing the right thing.
Mask actually came from even swine flu. I
Right.
mean, sorry,
Right.
Spanish flu. That
Spanish flu.
time people advocated.
Right.
Of course, I think SARS 2002-3, which first SARS came,
Yeah.
that of course disappeared in 8-9 months. Some mutation occurred, the virus disappeared.
Right.
These countries, Japan, South Korea, Thailand, they all learned the habit of wearing mask,
Correct.
and
Correct.
that probably saved them from this epidemic or pandemic.
Right. Downsides of the globalization, I guess. We've grown too far and could not contain it in Wuhan itself. Okay, the next question is, what are the alarming levels of threshold for oxygen, especially if there are no symptoms? Any oxygen levels which you think
You
are
see,
alarming?
there is now that everybody who has a COVID should measure the oxygen saturation.
Hmm.
If anybody is above 94%, it's okay.
Hmm.
And we also even tell them, okay, do some 6 minutes walk.
Hmm.
If after that also is above 94%,
Hmm.
then no issue, even if you're continuing with fever. But
Hmm.
if it falls before 94%, that's
Hmm.
the alarm that you must consult the medical community has to intervene. You might have to be hospitalized because
Hmm.
there is another realization in the disease which we call happy hypoxia.
Hmm.
Some people, even with 80 saturation, they may not have any symptom.
Hmm.
They feel what is, I have no problem.
Hmm.
And so they don't try to get the medical, and then suddenly it falls.
Hmm.
That's why many people that we have suffered, particularly in these states, people ignored themselves because they didn't have any symptom. And
Hmm.
then suddenly they did it. That's why this practice that everybody should have a oximeter. I
Hmm.
think in the state of Punjab, a
Hmm.
kit was made which
Hmm.
should contain a oximeter, contain a thermometer, so given to everybody is positive,
Hmm.
so that whether he can afford or not. So
Hmm.
at least, so this is a simple device which I think taught us a lot of lesson like mask. I'll say the second simpler thing is having an oximeter at home and monitoring your oxygen.
Hmm. Okay, thank you. There's a specific question around your specialty around cardiac. COVID sometimes results in the formation of clots, which may lead to cardiac arrest. Is blood clotting still possible despite taking the blood thinning medicines?
You see, this coagulopathy which occurs in this virus,
Hmm.
that's not much. There's not much that evidence to show that antiplatelet people usually take for as a coronary patients. That
Hmm.
is really prevents this coagulation. This is more like thrombotic issue,
Hmm.
and that's why now anybody who has a COVID moderate symptoms in
Hmm.
the hospital, we try to give a prophylactic heparin.
Hmm.
That's the important to prevent to
Hmm.
control coagulopathy. And now there are biomarkers which are done, which
Hmm.
tells you how the patient is developing this disorder. Like D-dimer is one marker which tells you about the coagulopathy. If
Hmm.
it is very high, you might have to use therapeutic doses.
Hmm.
So that's why this use of this particular heparin or low molecular heparin, was realized in April, May, and that has been very aggressively used and helped. But other antiplatelet aspirin people often take,
Hmm.
the usefulness in preventing this is not much there. Though there is some little data now coming, aspirin may help in addition.
Hmm.
But I think the low molecular, this was thought to be, let's say, more of a coagulopathy disease. The intravascular thrombus formation is the basic thing in the lungs before people get into more serious issues. So I think that's the probably pathogenically this is the issue with this.
Hmm.
So
Okay,
you
sure. There's one more question. Suppose there are two people, one with a high immunity and one with a low immunity, impacted with the same COVID-19 strain. Assume they infect other people of similar immunities. Will the virus from a high immunity guy passing on to the other versus the low immunity guy be any different, or will it be the same when COVID passes its COVID? Does the immunity of the passer of the COVID virus make a difference?
yes, if a person is somewhat immune compromised, that's
Hmm.
what I mean, then he is going to be more threatened with the more viral load.
Hmm.
And his response is going. That's why we say that death rates are far higher in those individuals. But
Hmm.
if somebody has a better immunity, is still protected.
Hmm.
That's what the question if it is like.
Sure, sure. Uh, why does COVID-19 disproportionately affect some specific people of some specific races like African Americans or Asians or Hispanics? as we keep hearing in at least some American news, I guess.
I think I don't think there's much data on when it's right in
Okay.
like in Europe. I mean, America, Asians even they said are more affected than the local. Maybe I think it's a question of some kind of a union is difficult. I don't think there's any clear. I think in our own country, if you look at certain states where I think it's very less as compared to. And recently, I think the Director General CSIR he published some observation that people, countries where I mean they were poor, less hygiene, they have a less mortality with this. Is the data available?
Right.
As compared to the countries which are highly, I mean, developed, proper sanitation. So maybe I think the draw, I mean, the conclusion from this kind of observation is only that probably at a when they get more and more infection of all kinds, you develop some kind of immunity. Not that I mean it should mean that people should not be following hygienic habits because we also lose many younger people, children, because of those unhygienic things. So, but these are the local. I mean, like BCG vaccine was thought that may protect, but the data has not really still shown that it gives some protection.
Okay, sure. So could you clarify when some vaccines say that they are 93% or 94% successful or effective, what 94% number means? Is it that they are trying it on patients who were hospitalized? Is it that these are the complicated COVID-19 cases on which it sort of helped get them rid of COVID-19? Or is it something else? Because otherwise 80-90% are asymptomatic or not getting too sick anyways.
Yeah.
So what does this 94% data signify, please?
See, this is like because in this short period that you have given a vaccine, then you stress this patient with the COVID-19 infection. Then you see how much is protected. So, like 90% plus were not getting infected when you challenge them with the COVID virus.
Okay, got it.
So, otherwise, this kind of figure, WHO recommends any vaccine which gives a 50% protection is a good vaccine. And these vaccines being 90% plus. And of course, the Russian vaccine, they also take 90% plus, but then their data is very small number. So that's what we sort of draw.
Okay. And in China, so Wuhan, how could other cities other than Wuhan so safeguard themselves and not get a lot of COVID cases after the virus flew and spread into many other cities of the world? But rest of the Chinese cities, either we didn't get the radar, we didn't hear news that the outbreak spread to Beijing or Shanghai or any other bigger cities. How could the other cities protect? If you have any idea about that.
Well, I have no idea. I only can say that we take any kind of information from that country,
right,
with a little pinch of salt. Whether it's that's, I mean, otherwise, I don't know.
Right. Okay. So I just want to check how are we doing for time. So it's about 8:40 now. How much time do you have? So accordingly, I can ask more questions if you have time. You okay for 5 more minutes, sir?
It's fine with me.
Okay. So the next question is, so currently there are a lot of farmers in Delhi during the protest, but is there any study on how come there is no at least known COVID spread among them? Is this immunity or something else?
See, that they're not being tested. They probably they approach. That's one. Second thing is that people come and go maybe when they go back kind of a thing. So it's very difficult to say. Oh, other thing which I can only see that they're in the open environment. I think that may not be that lethal as the closed environment for spread of infection. But we are worried when they come back to Punjab. So what I mean, so this is kind of thing. And as you say, 85% don't get anything. Younger people are quite of usually asymptomatic. But you're right that we are not seeing that much noise. But I think they're not. I think people try to test them, but they probably have not. So let us hope there is something other providential factor. I wish the
Right. And so the source of the virus is still speculative, that it came through a bat and probably something else. But I don't think we have, I'm not sure if we have enough evidence to prove that. How concerned are we, or how much deeper research is going on in trying to identify the core source of the virus?
see. I think there has been always there's been two concern whether it's a from the animals or it's a lab made. To very frank.
Yeah.
And this, I think, still there's no clear answer. There's, of course, the WHO and large scientific community say no, it's from the animals. But the other part is still not proven. I mean, like I'm not a let me again say I'm not a expert in infectious diseases. I'm not a immunologist, but some observations somebody mentioned, which just as a metric is me. He said that it's such a resistance virus. Up till now, the virus is usually that is such a resistance virus. So there is some concern from that angle, but I think we will probably the time we will have this answer. But at the moment, I think the belief is that it's from the animal source.
Got it. Okay. So I think these are most of the questions we had. I'll open up to the other panelists. If you want to ask any specific question, you have this privilege right now. Mr. Grover, Mr. Sanghi, Divya, if you want to ask anything, please go ahead. Otherwise, I would just wrap up with a few remarks. Any questions from you guys? Something might come to your mind.
Not for me.
Okay, thank you. Divya, anything?
No, I think all the questions have been answered very, very well, and it was very insightful.
Yeah. So I think if I may try and sum this up, which is a very hard job. So Dr. Talwar, thanks a lot for your time. I think we've learned a lot more than what we were learning in the news or, seeing some parts in the media, but you've put it all very well together for us with all the details, and you've kindly addressed many questions that came to our mind. So that's very helpful. And indeed, I think it's just so smart and silly at the same point to know that just wearing a mask for 6 weeks can sort it out. I just can't get over it, that thought. And I just don't get over it that the whole world is not unable to try and come together. Just people are people, humans are humans. They all think for themselves. But I think great possibilities for 2021. Hopefully we've learned a lot with some mistakes, some progress, and with some vaccines coming in, herd community coming out, some more social distancing coming around, and with the masks, of course, which we should never forget, the easiest thing. I think this is a year to look up to, and hopefully we will recover from the bottom of the COVID-19, and hopefully the world would get back to on its feet. And with the help of all the medical, especially thankful to all the medical professionals like Dr. Talwar, who'd been very scientifically and objectively trying to share all the information they have. I don't think any of us would survive and come out the way we are hopefully coming out now. So there's lots to look up to in 2021, as Dr. Talwar has said. It's with the optimism, I would like to wrap up from our side. Wish everyone a happy new year again. Thanks a lot to Dr. Talwar again for coming here on the Zoom. Hopefully someday we can invite you again for a cup of tea in PEC and, wearing a mask or not. No quarantine rule for you. But I'm sure we'd all be safe. And we really thank you again for your time with us. So Divya, Dr. Sanghi, if you want to say something, please. Otherwise, I'll wrap up from my side.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Talwar. And for me, the end of pandemic will be when can I teach students in a classroom? And, I'm really, really hoping that the next semester, which is like September or so, not the coming semester, but the next semester, September or October, we will have all the students on campus. Really, that's the hope with which, we wrap up today's session. And thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sanghi, for this privilege and honor to me. And I sort of wish everyone a very, very happy 2021. And I think we come out of what we have faced. The whole globe has faced the serious issues. I hope 21 gives relief from that.